Shalom, shalom, friends, and welcome to this episode of the Watchdog exclusively on the TheCynicogue News. I am your host, CJ Cox, here to tell you that we are living in biblical times. And I want to go ahead and briefly apologize to you guys for the strangeness of my audio today. I am still, unfortunately, recovering from a wisdom tooth extraction that has seemingly developed into a dry socket. And so I have gauze in my mouth at the moment. It may be a little bit difficult to understand. If it is, I do apologize. Hopefully we'll be able to get through this without any incident. I want to go ahead and have some channel housekeeping here real quick. So for any of you guys who are here, please do like, please do share. Please consider subscribing if you have not done so. Please consider hitting that bell to get notified every single time we go live. Get this out to all the different social media accounts which you frequent, because, of course, what good is a message without an audience to hear it? And also, I would very much appreciate if you guys would be willing to check out my Patreon. It is TheCynicogue on Patreon. And if you guys believe that this content is worth it, please do consider giving there. You can also, of course, find me on any social media that I'm on. Those will be Gab, Parler, Twitter, Facebook, Minds, and of course I can also be found on BitChute and Rumble, though I don't go live on those channels. You can find the Watchdog on those channels though. So definitely check those out if you guys are interested. Certainly appreciate that. One thing I will say about, considering this wisdom tooth thing, I am in a decent deal of pain. So, if it gets too bad, we may end up, unfortunately, stopping the episode early. Now, I'm going to try and get through it. I think I should be able to. It's just an hour of speaking, right? It's not that difficult. But nonetheless, we'll see what ends up happening here. Got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. And I'm going to go ahead and jump right into that now, rather than continuing with the housekeeping, because there's not much more left. A lot of it is going to be repetition because a recent episode was deleted. But there is some new stuff to talk about, and there's also some stuff I want to correct for the record. So, for our pre-article discussion today, it's going to be, it's going to be two-faceted, actually. The first is going to be a correction of something that I had said on the previous episode, the one that did end up getting deleted. And the next that's related to this is basically some stuff about the so-called culture war, which indeed is only a culture war, so-called. And I'm going to go ahead and explain why I believe that. So, y'all may remember the Brandy Love situation. I had actually said at the time, if you guys, well, so briefly, if you guys don't recall, Brandy Love is an adult actress, yes, a porn star, who was attending a TPUSA event that was a student action event. And basically, long story short, she bought a VIB ticket. She was advertising the fact that she was there. People there decided that they did not want her to be there. She left, became a big controversy. All right, you're up to speed, right? And you probably already knew about it anyways, but just in case you didn't, you're up to speed now. At the time, when it first came out, I was under the impression that this was just kind of a, what you might call, political conservative get-together, and that she was operating in a non-official capacity as a paying customer. And so I said, even though I agreed that we should absolutely not have porn stars representing us, and we'll go into that here in a little bit, I said in the end that I did feel that she might have been mistreated. I'd like to correct that, actually, because as it turns out, there's some details that I wasn't privy to that do kind of change the situation. The biggest one being that it is, or was, a student action committee. Now, I was under the impression that this was not specifically geared towards students. There are some things that they decided to do that maybe I wouldn't have done if I was specifically geared towards students, such as searching such as serving, not searching, serving alcohol maybe wasn't particularly wise, but I get it, and you know, obviously alcohol, you know, giving somebody a beer isn't the same thing as having a adult actress actively promoting herself at the event, right? So obviously we are comparing apples and oranges in that situation, but regardless, it doesn't actually matter, because as it turns out, the event was actually Student Action Committee, which means the expectation was that there were going to be high school and college age boys there, as well as girls, of course. And you know, unfortunately, let's just be honest about the reality we live in. A lot of those boys may have known this woman for her, shall we say, professional work, if we wanted to be sort of colloquial, I guess. That does kind of change everything, honestly. That does change everything, because it's one thing for a person who has a skewed view of conservatism to show up as a paying customer to an event that is meant for conservative adults. It is an entirely different thing for that person to use their influence at that particular place over young children or over young people in general, right? And so I think that's problematic. The other thing is it turns out her name isn't actually Brandy Love, which I guess I kind of should have suspected that. Brandy Love does kind of sound like a stage name. But that obviously changes things as well. Why? Because it means that at the event, she's actually advertising herself by a stage name that leads directly to her pornographic movies. She does have her normal name. She could have totally been using it. And obviously that adds a little bit of a different predicament in there too. And also, and this is a third thing that makes it a little bit different, she does actually actively post her work on Twitter, which means that when she's actively posting the stuff that she does at this political action committee or event or whatever on Twitter, if people want to go see that, one of the things they have to get through in order to see that is pornography. And of course, considering the fact that we've already established the people there were young boys, for the most part, that's obviously not appropriate. And so, because of those things, because of my figuring out those things, I would like to say, I take back what I said. I think TPUSA actually probably was right to remove her from the premises. I think that was actually probably a wise decision for them. And I also believe that there is still a very heavy level of truth in the opinion, if you will, that we should not be having pornographic actresses or people who are considered to be morally distasteful representing us. Now, and this is where I'll start to turn this discussion a little bit into what exactly is conservatism and who are we going to have representing us as conservatives, right? I have long caught the ire of my conservative brethren for my fierce disapproval of Donald Trump and of Trumpism. And I'm not going to turn that into the topic of this episode today. However, I do want to point out, right, that this is part of the reason why I have that problem, right? Because I think that if we are going to be, what is it that we are conserving as a people? We call ourselves conservatives, okay? Are we just conserving a version of American nationalism? Because while I agree you should be a patriot, I don't think I should base my entire political being on the American flag or nationalism or something like that. So are we conserving the Constitution? Great, love it. Phenomenal document. Is that really the basis of my entire political thought, though? Are we conserving the capitalist system? Fantastic. I love the capitalist system. Buy and sell. Is that the actual basis of how I identify myself politically, though? So on and so forth, right? Okay, so what actually is the thing that makes me conservative, that makes me want to say, I want to conserve X? What is X? And the answer is, X is culture, and specifically Christian culture. Not American culture, not Western culture, Christian culture. All right? And if That is, in fact, the thing that differentiates me as a conservative from, say, Adam Kokesh as a libertarian, right? Or Ron Paul as a libertarian conservative, a combination of the two, right? If that's the thing that separates me from them, and that's what makes me a conservative, the thing I wish to conserve, then I need to act like it. And I appreciate TPUSA acting like it when it comes to Brandy Love. I would like us to now act like it for everything else. Let's not have the thrice married serial philandering egomaniac as our representative. Let's not even consider the mentally ill transgender reality star for our governor. Let's not even be in the business of saying somebody like Kanye West, at least unless he has a very serious change, which who knows, he might have, I don't know, right? But the point is, Kanye West as Kanye West representing us, I don't think so. Milo Yiannopoulos, I don't think so. Don Blankenship, I don't think so. Kid Rock, I don't think so. Melania Trump, I don't think so. This isn't to pass judgment. It's simply to say we need to be conservatives, meaning the people who conserve. And what are we conserving? Christian culture. Christian culture. And I think I am happy with TPUSA deciding that they want to conserve Christian culture and taking a hardline stance against pornography as a result. And I'm happy with Lauren Chen, and I'm happy with Matt Walsh, and with Ali Beth Stuckey and Ben Shapiro and these other people who are calling attention to the fact that pornography is not in any way, shape, or form conservative. However, right, it still does need to be pointed out that all these other people have compromises, right? They have certain things that make them a compromised person. And I'm not saying don't listen to them. I'm not saying cancel them. I'm not saying any of that stuff. What I am saying, though, is if you really want to be a conservative, you have to have a certain group of people who are representing you. You have to have a certain standard of person who is representing you. We have to not be in a world where we have no more dress codes in school, and even the secular world is asking if the Olympic uniforms are too sexualized, and Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion are tripping each other on the Grammy stage, right? We need to live in a world where we are detached from that, not allowing it in by virtue of Milo Yiannopoulos and Donald Trump's and so on and so forth. And Brandy Love's, right? And I hope everybody agrees with me on that. That's going to be the end of our pre-article discussion for today, because I want to jump into some stuff here. And one of these here, like I said, some of this is going to be repetition, unfortunately, because of a video being taken down, but not all of it. So, city of Charlottesville goes on a history-killing spree. This is one of the recap ones. So if you guys are like, hey, I think that CJ did something about this, maybe even this exact same article a week ago. I did, actually. It was this exact same article. But that video is no longer up. So now I am redoing it. And I hope that we can get through it in a more concise manner. So city of Charlottesville has gone on a history-killing spree. Now, for those of you who don't know, potentially you're living under a stone or a boulder, there has been a huge controversy in the last decade, but really in the last 6 years, regarding Confederate statues and monuments, with a lot of people here actually basically saying that these monuments are a symbol of oppression, white supremacy, and that they need to be taken down. Now, this has, like I said, been a really big deal in really the entire last 10 years, but it had a couple of moments that really caused it to pick up steam in the last 6 years, starting with the Charleston church shooting in 2015, moving on through the Unite the Right rally in August of 2017, and then, of course, the killing of George Floyd by Derek Chauvin caused what many people consider to be a national reckoning that involved a lot of distancing from Confederate names, monuments, flag, so on. Well, the city of Charlottesville, that city that was actually under attack in 2017, as they like to say, at least, there was a terrorist attack there. I don't want to pretend that there wasn't. However, it is exaggerated for sure, right? But nonetheless, that city has decided that they were going to take down a couple of statues. A Stonewall Jackson statue, a Robert E. Lee statue, and a statue of Lewis, Clark, and Sacagawea. And actually, there is another statue that's not in the article I'm referencing, but that has actually been taken down by the city of Charlottesville. And it's a general that I can't really remember what he did, to be honest with you, and it's gonna annoy me a little bit. But there's another general that they had a statue of in Charlottesville, and they decided to take it down. His name is fleeting me, and to be honest, it was fleeting me in the last episode too. I should have actually used this opportunity to look it up, but nonetheless. So Charlottesville took down these statues recently, and excuse me. And, you know, a lot of people have been, of course, talking about this because it seems to be an example of the exact slippery slope that we as conservatives have been talking about. What do I mean by that? Well, back when people were removing these statues, people like myself, and you can actually find a debate that I did with the Raging Atheist on this issue, and numerous others, were telling people, look, if you go after the Confederacy, this non-existent dead entity, right? What you're doing is you're going after history. There's not a living Confederacy for you to go after. You're going after history. And if you're going to start going after history, you cannot stop with the Confederacy. Why? Because humans are logical beings, whether they like it or not. And if you don't like the fact that Stonewall Jackson fought for the gray, you're probably not going to like the fact that Abraham Lincoln was a white supremacist. And if you don't like the fact that Abraham Lincoln was a white supremacist, you're probably ain't going to like the fact that Crazy Horse killed women and children. And if you don't like the fact that Crazy Horse killed women and children, you're probably not going to like the fact that Thomas Jefferson had slaves, and so on and so forth, right? Basically, every historical figure has done some atrocious and heinous things, almost all of them at least, right? And what we were saying is that this canceling of culture, ironically, is not going to stop with the Confederacy. They're going to move on to native monuments. They're going to move on to monuments of the founders. They're going to move on to monuments to different generals and American folk heroes and so on and so forth. And this is why, even though we need to never be in the business of idolizing the past, nor do we need to be in the business of actually nor do we need to be in the business of deifying individuals, right? But we should absolutely be defending historical monuments and historical symbolism because it will not end here. It will end with the complete and total obliteration of our histories and of our folklore and of our culture, okay? Now, let's go ahead and get right into this article here so you guys can know a little bit as to what I am talking about here today. This is from NPR. It was written by David Mistich. And it's a little bit old at this point, about 16 days old, but nonetheless, does give you guys an idea. And what we saw here, right, was an example of exactly what I'm talking about, right? They took down the Confederate statue, and then after they took down the Confederate statue, they said, hey, you know what? We're already here. Let's take down a statue of William Clark and Sacagawea. We're already here. Let's take down a statue of this Union general. And of course, when the George Floyd riots were happening, we saw vandalism of the 54th Massachusetts, which was an all-black Union regiment. We saw people calling for the taking down of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington statues because they owned slaves. We saw people vandalize the Lincoln Memorial. So we already knew that it wasn't going to stop here. We'd already seen the fruition of this slippery slope. But Charlottesville, which is for many people ground zero, has now become the spitting image of this slippery slope. And I want to go ahead and read this to you guys here today. So after removing two statues, Charlottesville officials vote to take down a third. Once again, after removing two statues, Charlottesville officials vote to take down a third. Saturday marked a day of sweeping changes to the landscape of Charlottesville, Virginia, as local officials removed 3 statues seen by many as symbols of perpetuating racial inequality in America. Early Saturday morning, the city took down statues of Confederate Generals Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. Then, during a midday meeting of the city council, officials unanimously voted to remove another statue featuring Meriwether Lewis, William Clark, and Shoshone interpreter Sacagawea, which was taken down Saturday afternoon. By the way, if you guys think I am, that's a weird pronunciation, perhaps, that you haven't heard, Sacagawea, that is actually the authentic pronunciation. Sacagawea is an anglicization. So fun fact for you, but nonetheless. Here you can see they called an emergency meeting after they had taken down these Confederate statues. Why? So that they could start taking down statues to non-Confederate, non-slave owning folk heroes of the United States and one of the indigenous peoples of this continent. We're not allowed to honor them either, I guess. That's not woke enough. I don't know. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I thought that it would be a good thing from a liberal woke perspective to actually be honoring somebody of indigenous heritage, but what do I know, right? I'm just a white guy. And by the way, you may see, real quick, I want to note, you may see a hashtag on this video. It says Terros Historia. If you agree with me that history is worth preserving, please get that hashtag out there. Terros Historia means preserve history or guard history. And I personally believe that it is something that we should absolutely do. Preserve history for posterity, preserve history for those who are around us, preserve history even for our own selves, right? Because those who do not know their own history, not only are they doomed to repeat it, but they can't possibly learn from it, right? But moving on. Public outcry over the statues of Lee became the backdrop for an August 2017 Unite the Right rally, in which white supremacists descended on the city, ultimately leading to the death of one counter-protester. And to be fair, not everybody who was on the pro-Confederate statue side was a white supremacist, but it was called by white supremacists, and those who were not white supremacists but decided to show up anyways definitely did make a bad decision hitching themselves with white supremacists. That's just not a good PR move, right? But there were people who were not white supremacists, like Faith Goldie, James Alsop, and so on, who were there, just to be fair, right? In fact, this is where you get the infamous good people on both sides comment by Donald Trump, right? But anyways. And it is also true that a white supremacist man did get into his car, ram a bunch of people, and end up indeed killing a young girl. And so that's also, something that doesn't need to be noted. Anyways. As the crane neared the Lee Monument Saturday morning, Charlottesville Mayor Nakuya Walker, the city's first black female mayor, spoke to a crowd gathered at the site. Quote, taking down the statue was one small step closer to the goal of helping Charlottesville, Virginia, and America, grapple with the sin of being willing to destroy, black people for economic gain, end quote. Walker said, according to the Associated Press. And of course, every nation in the world was willing to abuse some group of people for their own economic gain. That doesn't actually justify it, but it does take away the perceived uniqueness in America, right? People think that America is somehow different from the rest of the world, that we're particularly evil. We did have a pretty brutal genocide against natives, and we had a pretty brutal enslavement system. I'm not going to pretend those things are not the case. But the idea that these are somehow unique to us is, of course, absurd. Nonetheless, I will point out, though, while I'm stopped, that it is absolutely not helpful for racism or helpful for cultural healing for us to destroy history. That doesn't compute, right? 1 + 2 does not equal 3 in this particular situation. Well, actually, I should probably rephrase that, right? Because 1 + 2 = 3 is a mathematical fact. 1 + 2 does not equal 5, which is what you seem to be presenting me in this situation, right? That'll be a better way of wording it, perhaps. There is nothing that, even if there are like raging, racist, anti-black, anti-native, white supremacist, fascist scum sitting up there in Charlottesville every day, staring out to that statue and thinking, "Gold darn it, old Bobby Lee should have won that war." Even that guy, right? That dude is still racist after today. You didn't solve anything by taking down a statue of Stonewall, by taking down a statue of Robert, by taking down a statue of Sacagawea. Didn't happen, right? I don't know what you think this accomplishes, but I can tell you what it actually accomplishes. It doesn't. Anyways, descendants of Sacagawea did say the statue was offensive, and that's what the article goes into next. I'm not going to read that because, frankly, I'm not going to dignify something so stupid by putting it on the air. But basically what you need to know is that they said that they thought that the Sacagawea statue was actually somehow demeaning to her. And in fact, I will at least read you the quote that was made by them so that you can get an understanding as to the absolutely ridiculous logic behind taking down these statues, right? So the quote here, which is from a woman named Justina Abrahamson, who's apparently a descendant of Sacagawea, says, quote, "It depicts our ancestor as if she's a dog going along on the trip," end quote. And so that's why she says that it is demeaning. She also goes on to say, in the most absolutely pathetic and pedantic display of putrid emotions I think I've ever seen. I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding. Look, I don't know. It's hard because I don't want to talk like this, and yet at the same time, it's like, you guys can't possibly be this dumb. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and forget I said that, and we'll just move on to the actual words. Quote, "I felt that it should be melted down. That's my opinion. I feel that it's entirely offensive and it should be obliterated. But if it can be utilized to give a message, to give a greater message, to educate the public, that would be an opportunity. So I am very pleased with this taking place. It's been a long road. Sorry if I don't take Miss Abrahamson's emotions here very seriously, but it just so happens that the person who actually made this statue did tell us why he designed the statue the way that he designed it. So let me show you again the picture of this statue real quick. See, she's obviously sitting here like a dog, right? That's what a dog does, is they sit and they lag behind as the big, strong, strapping white lads get up there and look out with their chest puffs and their nice chiseled chins, right? That's how this is actually going. Except, teacher, quick question. What is it that Sacagawea did? Why did she get a statue? Well, I'm glad you asked, Mr. Jimmy. Sacagawea was a scout who led William and Clark through the forest that they did not, in fact, understand because they had never been there, and kept them alive. Question, people. Why would a scout be looking at the ground? Could it be potentially because she wants to notice the nature around her? Maybe she's paying attention to some tracks. Maybe she's paying attention to a trail. Maybe she's paying attention to some berries that are going to be useful because she has to eat them and there's no food anywhere near. And these completely useless, quote unquote, strapping lads don't know how to hunt because they're a bunch of city slickers. Could that potentially be it? Well, according to the person who actually made the statue, that is exactly it. William and Clark are looking off into the distance, looking at what they consider to be the big picture, not realizing that they're going to get themselves killed because they don't know what they're doing. Sacagawea, on the other hand, is looking down on the ground, paying attention to the things she needs to be paying attention to as a scout, as a guide. Miss Abrahamson, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. And frankly, I don't know why being a descendant, being like, I don't know, what are you, like 1/2000th Sacagawea or something like that? I don't know why that somehow makes you entitled to say that we're not allowed to honor your ancestor. Okay? I don't think that's how that works. In fact, let me say publicly, if I ever end up becoming like some great figure for some reason, Lord willing, or not willing, I guess I don't know if I would want that. But anyways, if that ever happened, and the Lord tarries, and I have descendants, and one of my descendants, I think it's offensive, and blah, 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 blah. I just want to let you guys know that kid can take a hike. He don't represent me, right? He can take a hike. I'm not about that business. I'm just being honest with you, right? What is it about being a descendant of someone that makes you all of a sudden some kind of an authority on their life and whether or not we're able to honor and acknowledge them? That doesn't make any sense. You clearly don't have any idea what you're talking about. You don't know what Sacagawea was doing. You don't know why she was doing what she was doing. You don't know what the statue that's actually sitting here represents. Why are you an authority on this? And the answer is she's not. She's not an authority on this. But because it hurt her little feels, because she was going to have a big sad over the fact that her ancestor was being portrayed by a statue, now we got to take it down, have further obliteration of our history that we were promised would not be obliterated, mind you. We were promised that it was only going to be people taking down Confederate statues and Confederate symbols, and that all of us were just being racist for wanting to defend it. And yet here we are, my friends, with the trashing of the 54th Massachusetts, with the taking down of the Sacagawea statues, with renaming of high schools from George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or Ben Franklin to some stupid stuff like Huey Newton, right? And I even respect Huey Newton, by the way. But let's be honest here. You're taking somebody who's a founding father and changing the name of the high school to a terrorist, a very racist terrorist, I might add. Not that he didn't have his reasons. Again, I have respect for Huey Newton. It's complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And it doesn't actually end here, of course. As I move on to this portion real quick so we can get our next banner. The Indians are gone. The baseball team, no more. Don't exist. And in their place, sorry, got an ad up here. And in their place, we have the Cleveland Guardians, who look like they actually got their logo from a freaking T-League team, if I'm being honest with you. Now, I don't care very much about baseball. It's a fun sport, and I do have my favorite team. It's the Arizona Diamondbacks. I watch games every now and then, especially World Series and playoffs, but I'm not huge on it. So why would I care if I'm not huge on it, right? Well, because it's the same thing that's going on here. And this is why I placed this hashtag Terros Historia, right? Preserve history, guard history, because if not you, nobody else is going to do it. You can see that already. Having the audacity to call a team Indians is apparently racist. Got to move it to Guardians for some reason. I don't know. How long is it going to be until somebody finds Guardians racist? For some reason. Do we got to change the Hawaii Warriors too? Florida State Seminoles, Chicago Blackhawks? I mean, the Washington Redskins are still just the Washington football team. I don't know how difficult it is to come up with a freaking sports team name, but apparently 2 years after they got rid of theirs, they still don't know how to do it. I'll give the Guardians credit for that at least. They came up with something new. But here we have, yet again, a destruction of culture, a destruction of history at the hands of the godless left. And in this particular case, it ruins a storied baseball franchise, just like it ruined a storied football franchise last year in the form of the Cleveland Indians. Or excuse me, not Cleveland Indians, Washington Redskins. This is why I say Terros Historia, my friends. Terros Historia. Preserve history. Because if you're not going to do it, nobody else will. You can't trust the museum anymore. You can't trust your cultural icons. You can't trust the statue. You can't trust your teacher. If you ain't going to do it, nobody will. Except God, I guess. So let's read a little bit from this Daily Wire article written by Joe Morgan on July 23rd. The Cleveland Indians are no more. After months of speculation, the Major League Baseball team in Cleveland has changed their name to Cleveland Guardians, which, by the way, is lame, but whatever. The announcement came via a video posted to Twitter by the Cleveland Indians with actor Tom Hanks doing the narration. Yes, no joke. Tom Hanks narrated it. They actually hired... Hang on, you guys got to watch this. Wait a minute. Hang on. I just noticed I don't have my screen shared right now. My apologies, friends. I hope it was shared in my previous article. But I just noticed I didn't have it shared right now. All right, you guys got to watch this. This is honestly hilarious. I'm not kidding. I don't mean to insult people, but like, honestly, the whole we're gonna get an actor and he's gonna make this inspirational speech as if some director didn't write it for him, right? About how like we're all like diverse and strong and we're gonna make it through this and all this other kind of crap. It's just, I can't stand it. But nonetheless, gonna go ahead and show you guys this just to give you guys a good laugh. Brother Nicholas says he said something earlier. Yeah, I should have been paying attention. By the way, Nicholas and Jamie, Shalom. Thank you guys for being here today. I want to briefly, since I didn't have it shown there, I want to show you guys the statue of Sacagawea real quick. So there you see Sacagawea is in the kneeled position, right? She's looking to the ground to scout, and you can see William and Clark, I don't know which is which, looking off into the distance at the land, almost as if to see like what they would consider the big picture, but which would eventually, of course, if they did not have Sacagawea with them, get them killed because they don't know what they're doing. But anyways, now that we got that small visual representation, let's get back to this. I'll go ahead and it's only a 2-minute video, but you guys are going to love this. It's hysterical.
We are a city on the rise, forging into the future from our ironed-out past. We are a city of fire and water, of trees and towers, built through generations of blue collars and the brightest scholars, and all of those who have worked harder. We hold tight to our roots and set our sights on tomorrow. And this is our team that has stood with our city for more than a century, from Old Municipal to the corner of Carnegie. A team that has seen its own progress and prosperity. Its history flows like the river through the heart of this city. A history that has given us miraculous moments. Moments that spanned years and others 22 games. Moments that broke barriers and moments that broke hearts. Moments that prove this is more than a game. We remember those moments as we move forward with change. You see, it has always been Cleveland. That's the best part of our name. And now it's time to unite as one family, one community, to build the next era for this team and this city.
No, Brother Nicholas. Unfortunately, it is not actually quite that funny. For those of you who are not seeing the live chat, he asks, funnier than a prayer to the Queen of Heaven, and that is a reference to a prayer from Pope Francis in his letter to Chinese Catholics, September 2018. Which actually, to be fair, is actually quite a somber letter. But I suggest you guys read that if you want a good laugh. Catholics believe wholeheartedly that they do not worship Mary. Go ahead and read that prayer to the Queen of Heaven and tell me whether or not they worship Mary. Anyways, go ahead and finish this real quick.
Keep watch and guard what makes this game the greatest. To come together and welcome all who want to join us. We are loyal and proud and resilient. We protect what we've earned and always defend it. Together we stand with all who understand what it means to be born and built from the land. Because this is the city we love and the game we believe in. And together we are all Cleveland Guardians.
Now, real quick, I'm going to pause it because it's just doing this now. By the way, that's their new garbage logo, just for the record. But I just want to point out, Tom Hanks, not only is he not from Cleveland, but he does not live in Cleveland. And I just thought that was another little funny thing about that. Moving on, quote, we're excited to usher in the next era of the deep history of baseball in Cleveland, end quote, owner Paul Dolan said in a statement. Quote, Cleveland is always, has and always will be the most important part of our identity. Therefore, we wanted a name that strongly represents the pride, resiliency, and loyalty of Clevelanders. Guardians reflects those attributes that defines us while drawing on the iconic guardians of traffic just outside the ballpark at the Hope Memorial Bridge. It brings to life the pride Clevelanders take in our city and the way we fight together for all who choose to be a part of the Cleveland baseball family. While Indians will always be a part of our history, our new name will help unite our fans and city as we are all Cleveland Guardians. God, I want to puke. Their official name will change after the 2021 season. Quote, "This is a historic moment for our franchise, and we are excited for our players and staff to debut our new team, name, and look in 2022. President of Baseball Operations Chris Antonetti said in a statement, quote, "We look forward to our team proudly representing the city of Cleveland as the Guardians," end quote. The organization has faced years of protests from activists who felt the name was racist. The Cleveland Indians have had this name since 1915. After 2018, after the 2018 season, the franchise moved away from their Chief Wahoo logo, which many consider to be racially insensitive, which, if you guys don't remember, is a big, smiling, brightly red-colored Native American. City concerns over offending members of Native American and Indigenous peoples. Citing concerns over offending members of Native American and Indigenous peoples. The name announced in December that they'd be choosing a new name. And in June, the team announced that they had narrowed the possible choices down to a final list after months of research and conversation with fans. Quote, "We've engaged our fans and community on many aspects of our team name and process," end quote, said Curtis Danberg. And blah, 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 blah. The name change comes after Washington Redskins changed their name to the Washington football team after the 2020 season. And obviously another statement from him talking about his ridiculous reasons that nobody cares about. So, of course, this is the world that we live in, right? We live in a world where it's totally fine to have, for example, the Force is female, right? Ostracizing a bunch of males who might watch a Star Wars show. But it's not okay to name your team the Indians. I don't know. That's cool. We live in a world where it's okay to boycott a restaurant like Chick-fil-A because they have the audacity to support traditional marriage. But you better not have a Native American on your butter. And I could continue on, with references to Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben and the Washington Redskins and all this stuff. But you guys get the point, right? And the thing is, you're going to get the point 100,000 more times because it's not going to end here. We're going to be talking about this again and 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 again. And guess what? I got a video on loop of me saying that if you want it. I'm not actually kidding. I'm going to use it for a meme. But I'm serious. Right? Like this is where we get when we refuse as a people to defend history, to defend our culture, to defend our way of life. And I don't say this as a rallying cry because frankly, I think we already lost. People want to say we're fighting the culture war. The culture war was lost in like 1969. I don't know where you've been. Okay. But it ain't in this country apparently because the fact that we're now taking down these statues and changing the names of baseball teams is proof positive that the liberals won. And not only did they win, but they won handedly. They took the House, right? And there wasn't no Pyrrhic victory. Wasn't even no decisive victory. Smashing victory. Absolutely brilliant defeat, right? That's what happened. At best, you might be able to shoot for a cultural revolution at this point. But we ain't fighting no culture war. We're done with that, right? Like, that ship has sailed, bro. But anyways, moving on to other stuff, because we do have other very important stuff to talk about. There has been some recent changes in the Temple Mount status quo. Maybe, at least. It's kind of hard for sure to say definitively. But it does appear that there are Jews being allowed to pray at the holy site. That's fine. Hang on, I just got to say. Also, Brother Nicholas says to zoom in, so I am going to go ahead and do that. But he says Indians will always be a part of our history. We'll see about that. Yeah, basically. He also says, this is also funny. Platitudes, Guardians. It literally is basically the quote. Platitudes, insert further platitudes, insert another platitude. Also, we're the Guardians now. But anyways, I'll make sure to zoom in on this next article. So, Israel is quietly letting Jews pray on the Temple Mount in a break with the status quo. Now, for us who are watching the Watchdog consistently, or in my case, involved in the Watchdog consistently, this shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. But it may come as a surprise for some, especially if you maybe thought that because of how hard I biffed on my recent prediction about Israeli politics, that maybe this wasn't actually going to go down the path that we all already knew it was going down, right? Now, recap briefly, for those who don't know. There has, over the last 15 years, been a push to internationalize the Temple Mount, to set up a third temple parallel with the Dome of the Rock, where Jews will be able to ascend the mount and pray at their holiest site, but parallel, not on top of, their Muslim quote-unquote brothers, and establishing the area as a house of worship for all nations. And this was actually led by Temple Mount movement leader Yehuda Glick. While Yehuda Glick was running for president in 2021, he lost. And there was an opportunity to set up what appeared to be a intra-religious coalition that would absolutely be interested in setting up these kinds of things. They lost. And what seemed like it was going to be a shoo-in for basically establishing the government that might get us transitioning into the end times government of Israel, right, completely fell apart. Namely because of an anti-Netanyahu sentiment that has grown very, very, very strong over the last 3 years, but really has been steadily brewing since 2015. And perhaps that might have made many of us think, okay, so it's not actually going down the path that we all thought it was. If you recall, when I apologized for how bad I did biff, because I noticed that the reason I biffed on that prediction was because of my essentially disregarding words on the ground coming from people who were actually in Israel, right? And their opinions on Netanyahu. And I did biff that, to be fair, but if you guys recall, when I was conceding that point, I was also trying to make clear to you guys, let's not get deceived here into thinking just because what we thought was going to happen didn't happen. That means the path that we all know we're on, we're not actually on. Let's not get deceived into that. Because we are on this path. We all know. We don't all think. We all know we're on this path. And just because there's some diversions here and there, just because the path doesn't appear to always be going straight, that doesn't mean we're not on the path, right? And I think what you're seeing here in the changing of the status quo, quietly, not officially, not by policy, but quietly, is in fact us continuing down that self-same path. The status quo, for those of you who do not know, is that Israelis are not allowed to ascend the Temple Mount to pray, which I don't agree with, by the way, but I don't think that they're doing it because they want Jews to pray at their holiest site. I think they're doing it because they, like the Temple Mount movement, want to build a false temple as a prayer house for all nations. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and read. Israel quietly letting Jews pray on Temple Mount in break with status quo. Network airs footage of daily sessions being held in the compound with police turning a blind eye in what would appear to be a reversal of decades-long policy. Appears to be. And it's important to note that because this hasn't been official yet. Hasn't been officialized, if you will. Right? Network airs footage of daily sessions being held at the compound with police turning a blind eye on what would appear to be a reversal of decades-long policies. Unfortunately, the Times of Israel usually credits the whole staff, so I don't know who actually wrote this and cannot credit them. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and get into this. Oh, and here are some photo evidences in case you don't want to believe either me or the Times of Israel. Israel has quietly started allowing Jewish prayers on the Temple Mount in recent months, in what would appear to be a major change to the status quo which has existed at the holy site since the Jewish state captured the old city of Jerusalem from Jordan during the 1967 Six-Day War, according to a report Saturday. Channel 12's religious affairs reporter Yari Cherki, filmed prayers at the site in recent days as policemen, who in the past would eject any person suspected of prayer and sometimes kick people out for merely citing a biblical verse while speaking, passively looked on. And of course, you can see how bad of a situation it would be if you're a Messianic Jew or even an Orthodox Karaite Jew, right? And you want to actually worship the God of Israel at your holiest site. Again, the fact that they are right in a technical sense, and even in an emotional sense, and even in a real sense, doesn't mean that we should look past the reason that they're doing this. You can do the right thing for the wrong reason and get to a real bad place. I think we all have seen examples of that taking place. Quote, for months now, every morning, this unofficial prayer quorum has been praying on the Temple Mount, end quote. By the way, real quick, I want to just note before I continue on in the article, the only person who's going to do it right is Jesus. I know that's my opinion, right? But it's the facts, right? So anybody at any point in time wants to build a temple, wants to, have Jews ascending their holy site, all that kind of stuff. Unless it's Jesus, you can just go ahead and not trust it, right? Anyways. Quote, for months now, every morning, this unofficial prayer quorum has been praying on the Temple Mount, end quote. Cherki said. The worshippers gather without prayer books, tefillin, or any other symbols of prayer that could draw unwanted attention from Muslims of the compound that houses the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But pray they do, with the cops turning a blind eye. The Islamic Waqif, which administers the compound, is aware of the situation and monitors them from a distance, but has so far not taken any action, according to the report. Cherki described the developments as, quote, a revolution unfolding quietly and gradually under the radar, end quote. And that is 100% accurate, in my opinion. The Temple Mount is the holiest place in Judaism as the site of the biblical temples, as the site of the biblical temples. It is the site of the third holiest shrine in Islam, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and I want to again remind people that Muslims took control of the holiest site of Judaism, said this is our third holiest site in Islam, and also Jews, you're not even allowed to ascend it to pray. Just pointing that out. But anyways, Israel captured the Temple Mount in Jerusalem's old city in the Six-Day War and extended sovereignty throughout Jerusalem. Anxious to reduce friction within the Muslim world, however, and given that Orthodox sages generally counsel against ascending the Temple Mount for fear of treading on the sacred ground where the Temple's Holy of Holies stood, Israel since 1967 allowed the Jordanian Waqif to continue to maintain religious authority atop the mount. Jews are allowed to visit under numerous restrictions, but not to pray. In recent years, Israeli public perception of the ban on Jewish prayer has shifted. Through the fruits of a long-term concerted PR campaign, now using updated jargon calling for freedom of religion and human rights, the previously fringe Temple Mount movement, and that's Yehuda Glick's group, is increasingly mainstreamed. But in the face of Palestinian claims that Israel seeks to change the status quo on the mount that has intermittently caused flare-ups of violence in Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza, successive Israeli governments have long maintained that Israel is committed to the status established there over the past few decades and does not intend to change the accepted practices. Channel 12 reported that beyond prayers, lengthy Torah lessons have been held on the mount again with the tacit approval of police. Isn't this very interesting, right? So you're not seeing official policy change, but what you are seeing is the Israeli government basically just ignoring it. Oh, look at the pretty butterflies over here, not in the direction of those praying Jews. Aren't those some pretty butterflies over here, not in the direction of those praying Jews? And of course, you even understand and sympathize with them, right? But again, you have to take into account the motivation behind why they want to set up this Temple Mount and what they want to set up, this temple on the Temple Mount, and what they want to set up in setting up this temple on the Temple Mount. And it's not, what we would expect, right? It's as a international house of prayer for all nations, and as a means, potentially even a headquarters, for setting up this UN of religions, which Shimon Peres and Pope Francis had so eagerly decided they wanted to set up back in September of 2014. The report cited two main causes for the gradual change: the growing number of Jewish visitors to the site, a record 35,000 came in this year before the coronavirus struck, and productive contacts between some of the religious activists. Religious activists have even set up a Temple Mount management body that built a shaded hut at the entrance area leading to the mount, with refreshments for visitors and a model for the ancient Jewish temple. And it's way, way bigger than that. This article undersells it. Some of you guys may have seen previous Watchdog episodes where I have discussed they have reestablished the Levitic priesthood, and they are finding, by virtue of the Cohens, the Aaronic bloodline, they are seeking to potentially not only rebuild the temple, but to the exact specifications listed in Scripture. They have been looking for red heifers and do intend to sacrifice one once they find one that is without spot or blemish as a dedication for the new temple. And so on and so forth, right? So it's really a lot bigger than just simply, oh, these guys have a tent outside and they're giving refreshments to Jews who want to go and ascend the temple. It's not just that. Much bigger. Much, much bigger. It was not immediately clear who was responsible for the apparent change in police policy on the Mount. It seemed unlikely such action with such explosive potential consequences would be authorized without the knowledge of top officials. Contacted by the Times of Israel, the Israeli police commented, quote, as part of visits being routinely held in the area of the Temple Mount, police are acting in accordance with the visitation rules at the site that are meant to enable the preservation of public order and public safeties and are conveyed ahead of the visitors' entry. The existing restrictions on visitors at the site are based on government decisions and high court rulings on the matter over the years, end quote, police added. Visitors is the police term for Jews and non-Muslim tourists, entering the compound. A spokesperson for the Public Security Minister, Omer
text right now so that I can get it.
Apologies, friends. Had a internet issue there. Of course, as you guys who are longtime watchers may know, that does happen from time to time. But nonetheless, I'm going to go ahead and go back to where I was. Let's see here. Here it is. Yeah, right in front of me. All right, so this is where we left off. I'm going to go ahead and just get right back into the reading of it. And by the way, if you guys are watching this later on and you're not understanding what's going on, it's going to be because I edited that out. I know if you're watching this live, I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to edit that portion out so that the viewers later on don't have to deal with it. Anyways, a spokesperson for public security, Omar Barlev, commented that there was no change in policy from Tisha B'Av in previous years. In the past, attempts by Jews to pray at the site, even when quickly stopped by police, have sparked violence. So far, though, the report said the regular prayer sessions have been peaceful and have not led to unrest. Asaf Raid, spokesperson for an assortment of organizations active at the Mount, told the network, quote, "The entrance area has been fixed up. There are no lines of entrance. People go up to the Mount. There's no Wakif following you. There's a lot more room to breathe on the Temple Mount," end quote. Chancellor Harki stressed that this was still far from complete religious freedom for Jews on the Temple Mount, which of course is true, noting that he was told by police not to film or interview people there, and as a kippah wearer, which you probably know by the Yiddish term yarmulke, to refrain from religious activity. But on the ground, he says, quote, "The cops, in accordance with the new policy, look the other way," end quote. Some of the Temple Mount activists welcome the change, while others say there's still a long way to go. Quote, "Unfortunately, it's not prayer in the same sense that a Jew who has been going to a synagogue or a Western Wall would call prayer," end quote, said Arnon Segal, one of the activists. Quote, "It's very quiet prayer. Often a person who sways more than is allowed or mumbles too loud is interrupted. Praise the Lord for what there is, and there's a lot more to be done," end quote. And that ends the article there. And it's not even the only big thing that is occurring in this particular area. Because and I did just notice I didn't have the screen being shared here. I apologize, but I'm done with the article anyway. And I won't read this article, but it is in the link in the description. There's another article that says dozens of Israelis storm Al-Aqsa complex in Jerusalem, and who are they led by? Well, none other than Israeli Rabbi Yehuda Glick. And so not only do we have policies changing on the ground, it appears, but we also actually have Israelis storming the Al-Aqsa complex mosque and cops not doing anything about it. What does this mean? Well, I think it's obvious, especially considering the collective nature of the current Israeli government, meaning they are leftist Muslims, atheists, Jews, people on the right, all united as one in an anti-Netanyahu coalition. That's what brought them together. Let's remember that, right? It's obvious to me that the only way that they could keep this change in policy and maintain this coalition is if Yehuda Glick is actually pushing this somehow. And how do I mean? Well, Yehuda Glick's the one who's pushing the idea of a parallel third temple built in an internationalized old city that belongs to a third party, specifically a group that happens to be a UN of religions, which is the same group that Shimon Peres pitched to Pope Francis. You can find it on the September 2014 version of the Jerusalem Post, okay? This is where we are headed. It's all his idea. And he's sitting here now, currently, leading stormings of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Big things are happening, friends. This is why I say, when I start these programs, that I am here to tell you we are living in biblical times. Because it's facts, my friends. It's facts. We are here. We are living in times prophesied about. There have been many people who have read their Bibles and have looked forward to living in the time that you are currently living in right now. Probably shouldn't yell. It kind of hurts my mouth. But get excited. Get excited. Anyways, I want to continue on because I'm already past my hour. And there's a couple things that I still do need to discuss. So, Pope Francis is, am I not going to be able to get this article? Weak. Sorry. Okay, I haven't actually shared my screen yet, so it's not like it's disappointing to you guys. But Pope Francis has recently put restrictions on the traditional Latin Mass. And a lot of people are not happy about it. A lot of people are very, 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 very angry with what the Pope has done here. And the article I'm going to have to read is going to at least tell you a little bit about how French Catholics are responding. Because unfortunately, the article I was going to read before needed a subscription to read. So I apologize for that. But anyways, Pope Francis traditional Latin Mass restrictions. And of course, it says how French Catholics are responding. The day after the motu proprio was issued, the French Bishops' Conference reaffirmed the bishop's intention to to pursue dialogue with these communities. And with what communities? Well, the communities that are actually using, or at least would have been using, a traditional Latin Mass. Now, really quick, just so you guys are aware, excuse me here, sorry, I have a little bit of a problem here. A motu proprio is a basically it's like a decree that is done without formality, I guess is probably the best way to put it, right? So it's official, but it isn't formal. As weird as that might sound, right? But nonetheless, let's go ahead and get into the article here. Responding to concerns raised by Pope Francis motu proprio restricting the traditional Latin Mass, French church authorities have issued a series of communiques seeking to reassure Catholics attached to this liturgy. Excuse me. The motu proprio Traditionis Custodes, published July 16th, arrived like a thunderbolt for a significant part of the French church because of its perceived severity towards traditionalist communities, which are regarded as places of strong missionary dynamism and magnets for de-Christianized youth. According to an investigation recently published by the Catholic magazine La Nef, traditionalist Catholicism is growing constantly in France, although it still represents a small minority, 4% of all practicing Catholics, 7% if we include the Society of St. Pius X, or SSPX. Estimating that there are around 60,000 traditionalist Catholics in France, the study concluded that traditionalist communities are slowly but steadily growing each year from a very young average age. The day after the motu proprio was issued, the French Bishops' Conference reaffirmed the bishop's intention to pursue dialogue with these communities. Quote, the French bishops wish to express to the faithful who usually celebrate according to the Missal of Saint John, they call him, the 23rd, and to the pastors, their attentions, their esteem for the spiritual zeal of these faithful, and their determination to continue the mission together in the communion of the church and according to the norms in force, a communique said, end quote. This statement led several observers, including the Catholic historian Yves Chiron, I think is how you would say his name, but anyways, quoted by Le Figaro, to conclude that the new norms would be applied with flexibility and benevolence by a number of French bishops. In the Diocese of Versailles, located in the western suburbs of Paris and considered a bastion of traditionalism, Bishop Le Crêpe, or Crêpe, however you would say that, not good at French, sorry, said that the situation was peaceful, with 6 communities usually celebrating masses using the 1962 Missal. Now, the question that we need to ask here is why is the Pope getting rid of Catholic tradition, especially when Catholic tradition appears to be actually Catholicizing secular youth? And unfortunately, I'm not going to read the entire article, but it is going to be provided in the description. You're not going to find it right now, unfortunately, because I had a different article there, but I will edit it so I can provide this in the description. Why would the Pope do this? And the answer is actually a lot more clever than you might think, I think. The traditionalist Catholic wing is also the anti-Francis Catholic wing. They also happen to be the anti-ecumenical Catholic wing. And frankly, if Catholicism were true, they're the ones that you should be supporting. Now, Catholicism is not true, of course, but nonetheless, you can see, like, the appeal that they have, being kind of zealous and fundamentalist Catholics, if you will, right? And they are the really tradition heavy, really Rome heavy, really catechism heavy, anti-Francis, pro-Benedict faction of the Roman Catholic Church. And what essentially Pope Francis is doing by eliminating their mass, or at least by attempting to weed it out, right? And of course, mass is the center of Catholic worship. What he's doing is he's effectively handicapping their worship so that they can no longer get growth as a group any longer. And he's basically weakening not only the group that most opposes him, but also the group that most opposes his ecumenical agenda, right? It's also because these traditionalist Catholics are going to be the ones who don't like Pope Francis dedicating Mormon temples in Rome, who don't like Pope Francis's Amazonian Synod, who don't like the fact that he has Our Lady of the Amazon, he calls it, a statue of Pachamama, in St. Peter's Basilica, right? These are your Taylor Marshalls, your Andrew Napolitanos, your Benedict XVIs, Edmund Burkes, so on and so forth, of the world. And so not only is he weakening the group that's most opposed to him in general, he's also killing two birds with one stone by weakening the group that is most opposed to his ecumenism. And again, the reason I always bring up the Shimon Peres meeting with Pope Francis in September 2014 and the United Nations for Religions that Shimon Peres pitched to Pope Francis in 2014 is because once you understand that meeting, that agenda was basically just ecumenism on steroids, right? Ecumenism just applies to the Catholic, or excuse me, to the Christian churches. And this was just taking it outside of those, right? To say, well, what about the Muslim and the Buddhist and so on, right? Once you understand that, everything that Pope Francis does makes perfect sense, because almost everything he does has that in play. That is Pope Francis's goal, is a cross-religious ecumenism, is a United Nations style body, but for faiths. And once you understand that, you will never misunderstand an action from Pope Francis ever again. And honestly, with how much he's actually been able to change the College of Cardinals, you might not ever misunderstand anything that the Catholic Church does till the end of time. I mean, we'll see what happens, right? But notice that this is happening, of course, at the exact same time that we're having all of these different religious changes on the Temple Mount in Israel, right? Is that coincidence? Well, in Earth, meaning here on the physical world, yes. I don't think these people are necessarily plotting with each other. But in the grand scheme of things, no. I think that we, as people who are smelling the coffee, if you will, maybe it's the morning's kind of getting started, the sun's up, it's time to get to work. Maybe you should start drinking the coffee, if you get the analogy, right? Because it's absolutely not coincidental, ironic, any of that stuff, in my opinion. But I think that's more from a divine perspective than anything else. It's called perennialism, he says. Ecumenism beyond professed Christians. All right, I didn't know that, Brother Nicholas. Thank you for that. I will start using that word now. Pope Francis's perennialism. I was actually unaware there was a term for that. I guess I should have known there would be a term for that, though, right? Because it's a thing that exists, and people like to categorize everything. Couple brief things I want to mention, but we're over the hour, so I'm not going to go too deep into them. First thing, China is refusing to let the WHO investigate COVID. This is the second probe, as you can see, into coronavirus origins, but the first one, as everybody ended up figuring out, was not only very secret, but also ended up coming to a very pro-Chinese communist conclusion, which we have very much reason to believe could have been, paid off or in some other way artificially influenced by the Chinese Communist government. Now that we have a second one, though, China has rejected it. And just to read briefly, China has rejected the World Health Organization's proposal for a second phase of its investigation into the origin of the novel coronavirus pandemic. Zheng Yixin, excuse me, the vice minister of the Chinese National Health Commission, told reporters in Beijing Thursday that he was extremely surprised when he read the proposal offered by the UN's health agency, which includes audits of laboratories in the city of Wuhan, where the virus was first detected in late 2019, and it led to more than 192 million infections around the globe, including 4.1 million deaths. And that's, of course, if you believe official numbers. Zheng said that WHO's origin tracing proposal lacks common sense and displays a disrespect towards science that makes it impossible for Beijing to accept. I won't read any further than that. The article is in the description below if you guys want to read it for yourself. But basically, you just see the circular firing squad that is the left continue to fire upon itself. But really, the main interest behind this is who ends up winning. Because if China ends up winning in this situation, then what that is an indication of is that the global cabal is more in the pocket of China than it is in the pocket of these global organizations. And if vice versa, then vice versa. So definitely an important thing to note there. Another thing I want to point out very briefly, Saudis are starting a new news wing in America. High-level Saudi visit follows multi-million-dollar foreign influence operation. Yes, multi-million-dollar foreign influence operation. Fun fact, this began with Steven Crowder. Okay? I'm not saying necessarily that Steven Crowder is a bad guy. I actually quite enjoy him. But you guys need to know that he is funded by Saudi money. And he was the test subject. And I actually did, if you guys recall, some of you old watchers will know, I actually reported on this when it happened. Because as soon as he announced it, I was skeptical. What's going on here? Why are you taking money from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia? I don't trust that. And lo and behold, as it turns out, the Saudis are actually starting a multi-million-dollar foreign influencing operation. Just know that every time that you get in any information from Steven Crowder. Okay? I'm just saying. I don't want us to be involved in a circular firing squad, but here's the thing. Sometimes it's not circular. Sometimes the guy just looks like your friend, but in reality, he is the enemy. So just want to note that. Anyways, top Biden administration officials this week hosted Saudi Arabia's Prince Khalid bin Salman, brother to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and Saudi Arabia's current deputy defense minister. Prince Khalid bin Salman was the kingdom's ambassador to the U.S. when Washington Post journalist Kamal Khashoggi was murdered in Turkey on the orders of the Crown Prince in 2018. The visit, which the Biden administration did not publicly disclose in advance, came on the heels of additional revelations about Khashoggi's murder and follows millions of dollars the Saudi government has spent, I had a tough time reading that, in foreign influence and lobbying targeting the U.S. President Joe Biden faced criticism over his administration's decision to not directly sanction the Saudi Crown Prince for Khashoggi's killing after campaigning in 2020 on making the Saudi Crown Prince a pariah for that death and other alleged human rights abuses. And of course, it was stupid for anybody to believe that Biden was ever going to say that in the first place. I mean, come on, guys. Like, Saudi Arabia is owned by the United States, okay? The idea that their crown prince is not, like, working for us is hilarious, okay? You guys got to understand. Everybody, like, thinks of nations that take foreign aid as, like ticks, right? That are, like, sucking from us. That is not how any of this works. They're client states. They belong to us. We control every aspect of Saudi foreign policy, of Saudi economic policy, of Saudi domestic policy. The crown prince does not get to take himself a duke without asking the president of the United States. All right. So just get this idea out of your head, though. The Israelis or the South Koreans, the Japanese, the Saudi Arabians, whoever it is, they're controlling us. Bull. Bull, my friends. Not the way it works. And if you listen to foreign politicians, they'll tell you this, right? For example, Rabbi Meir Kahane, the famously founder of the Koch Party up in Israel, used to talk about how the fact that Israel is getting money every year from America actually effectively turns it into a junkie waiting for its next fix. And in order to get that fix, it sacrifices its sovereignty to the United States. Perfect example of that is when the Israelis wanted to have a preemptive strike against against Iran recently, when, if they were to get nuclear capabilities. And what happened? The United States told them no. And guess who listened? Good old Bibi Netanyahu tucked his tails just like he's supposed to, like a good little slave, because that's what he is. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just being honest. You guys got to understand what America's position in this is. We're not the victim, okay? We are the aggressor. These states belong to us. Of course, Biden wasn't going to do anything about the killing of Khashoggi. The killing of Khashoggi happened with American approval. Guaranteed. That's why Trump didn't do anything about it either. And Obama and Bush wouldn't have done anything about it either. I got news for you. Biden's 2020 campaign pledged not to take any contributions from lobbyists or foreign agents, but his campaign and joint fundraising committee took in thousands of dollars from individuals registered to lobby for Saudi Arabia and the defense industry. These donors included defense lobbyists who worked as foreign agents for Saudi Arabia during the 2020 election cycle. Other donors not actively registered as lobbyists or foreign agents at the time of their contributions were still deeply involved in the influence space. Biden's joint fundraising committee brought in even more contributions from shadow lobbyists, those currently unregistered but longtime foreign agents of Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to read the Saudi spending shifts under Biden. Link is in the description, and you guys can read it for yourselves. But we are about to hit an hour and 30 minutes, so I am going to now start the wind down of this program. Oh, shoot, I didn't notice. I'm sorry, brother. I didn't notice you saying Zoom until just now. I really got to pay better attention to this live chat, because you guys help me out actually frequently when I'm having problems here. For example, earlier when I had my Wi-Fi cutting out. Although, when it's that bad, Nicholas does actually have my phone number, so that also works too. But of course, calling just to tell me to zoom in wouldn't work great. So I'll start paying attention to the live chat more. I apologize. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you being here today. If you liked this content, if you thought it was important, please consider hitting that thumbs up and sharing this to the different social media accounts which you frequent. Please consider hitting that notification and subscribing if you're interested in getting notified every time we go live. It's going to be every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you'd like to support us on any of the different social media accounts platforms which I frequent, you can find me at TheCynicogue on Minds, TheCynicogue on Gab, TheCynicogue on Parler, TheCynicogue on Twitter, TheCynicogue on Facebook. You can also, if you want to support me on any of the different alternative video streaming sites, they are not live, but I do upload same day, same episode to BitChute and Rumble, if you guys want to subscribe there and maybe do a little bit to overthrow our overlords here. I want to, once again, because I want these people to be elected, give out my endorsement to Ammon Bundy for governor 2022 of Idaho, for Chad Prather for governor 2022 of Texas. And I didn't say this last time, but I'd like to officially announce that the Watchdog is putting its support behind Larry Elder for governor of California 2021. And I hope that California Republicans make the right decision. I don't think that he'll win, but I do hope California Republicans make the right decision and at least nominate Larry over Caitlyn Jenner. I think it would be a very, very bad thing for California conservatives if they nominated Caitlyn Jenner. But nonetheless, I want to remind you guys that just because there are problems in our world with things like Trumpism, that does not mean that there are problems with patriotism, with nationalism, with Christianity, with conservatism, with the Constitution. And I want to remind you guys to be watchdogs for us here today and to preserve history. Terros Historia. Get that hashtag trending, if you will. Oh, the vote doesn't work that way, says Brother Nicholas. He'll email me. All right, I'll look forward to that email. Brother Nicholas, let's just say he knows about California politics, to say the least. But I won't say any more than that because I don't know what I'm actually allowed to say. But nonetheless, it's not a big deal, by the way. He's not like a CIA agent or anything. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I want to once again say Terros Historia to you. And I just want to say, lastly but not leastly, in the face of Armageddon, my fellow watchdogs, will you compromise?